A UK Poseidon patrol plane swept Poland's borders with Kaliningrad and Belarus after Russian drones pierced NATO airspace. Britain and allies are rushing jets and troops into eastern Sentry drills. Poland demands a Ukraine no-fly zone. Moscow warns it's a trigger for war. NATO draws its red line. Yet if Washington hesitates, is this deterrence or just a bluff Putin will call? A UK Royal Air Force P-8A Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft was noted flying in Polish airspace along the border with Russia and Belarus on September 15th, apparently highlighting a significant overland surveillance mission for the type, the war zone reported. The unusual flight comes amid rising tensions between NATO and Russia in the region, following the Russian drone incursions into Polish airspace last week. Since then, more Russian drones have entered Romanian airspace, while NATO has begun deploying additional fighter jets to bolster Poland's air defences. Evidence of the Royal Air Force P-8 mission appeared on publicly available flight tracking websites, which showed the Poseidon, serial number ZP809, flying up and down the Polish side of the border with the Russian exclave of Kaliningrad in the north and with Belarus in the south. The P-8 was operating from its home base of RAF Lossiemouth in Scotland. The P-8 may be generally described as a maritime patrol platform, but it is more accurately a multi-mission type with extensive ISR, that is, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance capabilities. These are equally relevant for missions over land or over water. Even without any specific modifications, the P-8's Standard Electronic Support Measures or ESM suite allows it to act in an electronic intelligence or ELINT collection role, specifically on enemy air defences and electronic order of battles. The development came as the UK announced on September 15th that it will deploy some of its Eurofighter Typhoon jets to patrol Polish airspace. Poland launched its Iron Defender 25 drills last month, featuring around 30,000 troops, including soldiers from other NATO member states. The Czech Republic has already sent 3 helicopters to Poland. Spain, Italy, and Sweden have pledged additional support. The British jets will join French Rafales, German Eurofighters, and Danish F-16s in the coming days as part of NATO's Eastern Sentry drills, the UK government said. Poland claimed that at least 19 Russian drones entered its airspace on September 9th, allegations that Russian envoy to the UN Security Council, Vasily Nebenzia, has dismissed as unfounded. Announcing the deployment in Poland, Starmer claimed,
"These aircraft are not just a show of strength. They are vital in deterring aggression, securing NATO airspace, and protecting our national security and that of our allies."
The deployment comes as Russia and Belarus conducted the Zapad 2025 military exercise involving around 13,000 troops. US military staff have attended the drills, while Moscow and Minsk have rejected Western accusations that the drill is a rehearsal for an invasion, calling them hysteria. Meanwhile, NATO is debating how far it will go to deter Moscow as Russian strikes creep closer to the alliance's eastern flank. After more than 3 years of restraint, allies are weighing whether to enforce a hard red line to protect members such as Poland and Romania. Options now being discussed include preemptively shooting down drones or cruise missiles that stray across borders from Ukraine, Belarus, or the Black Sea. A tougher stance would reassure Eastern allies long nervous of Russian aggression. Russia's immediate priority remains the defeat of Ukraine and the demoralization of its soldiers and civilians. If NATO fortifies its own frontier while leaving Ukraine's fate ambiguous, Kyiv could feel effectively abandoned. That fear is sharpened by the hesitation of US President Donald Trump and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth to guarantee an automatic American military response to every inch of NATO territory. Without clear US backing, Eastern members crave proof that the alliance will act. But a red line that merely marks NATO's border risks signaling to Ukrainians that the West will arm and subsidize their fight, but not support outright victory, turning a deterrent into what some in Kyiv may see as a betrayal. The Independent reported that some analysts argue the alliance should draw the line further east, creating a protected zone in western Ukraine to safeguard industry and humanitarian routes along the Romanian Black Sea coast. That would bolster Ukrainian morale and deter Russia without escalating into the full NATO-Russia war that a nationwide no-fly zone might provoke. The irony of a beefed-up NATO stance along its border is that it removes any ambiguity about where Ukraine lies, in no man's land. Whatever map NATO settles on, the warning is stark. Any red line must be defended unambiguously. If Putin tests it and finds weakness, the alliance's credibility and Europe's security will be at even greater risk. Meanwhile, Poland's foreign minister has suggested that NATO states should consider imposing a no-fly zone over Ukraine to protect the alliance's territory and people from Russian drones. Radoslaw Sikorski's remarks follow an intrusion last week by Russian drones into Polish airspace. Sikorski told the German newspaper Frankfurter Allgemeine,
"We as NATO and the EU could be capable of doing this, but it is not a decision that Poland can make alone. It can only be made with its allies. Protection for our population, for example from falling debris, would naturally be greater if we could combat drones and other flying objects beyond our national territory. If Ukraine were to ask us to shoot them down over its territory, that would be advantageous for us. If you ask me personally, we should consider it."
Sikorski's current proposal appears to be restricted to dealing with Russian drones approaching Ukraine's borders with NATO states. Meanwhile, Deputy Head of Russia's Security Council, Dmitry Medvedev, said on September 15th that the creation of a no-fly zone over Ukraine will mean the outbreak of a war between Moscow and NATO. In a statement, Medvedev said he was amused by Eastern Sentry, a new NATO initiative launched to shield and protect allies in the eastern flank after drone incursions into Poland last week.
But seriously, the implementation of the provocative idea of creating a no-fly zone over Ukraine and the ability for NATO countries to shoot down our UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles, will mean only one thing: a war between NATO and Russia.
Commenting on the idea of the use of frozen Russian assets in the West to bolster Ukraine's military, Medvedev said Moscow will pursue EU states until the end of time should they try to seize these assets.